Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Alter Your Health podcast. We are live in our Facebook group, Plant Based and Stress Free, and this is your source of information and inspiration to promote the holistic transformation of your health and our planet's health. And my name is Dr. Benjamin Alter. I'm the host.
My name is Dr. Susanna Alter. I'm the co-host, and we're both naturopathic doctors and the co-founders of Alter Health, where we support individuals in reversing disease and reclaiming optimal health through whole food plant-based nutrition and mind-body medicine.
And today we have been requested to talk about growing your own food, which we need to put out a really huge disclaimer at the beginning of this episode that we are by no means experts at growing your own food. We are certainly trying to become more experts at growing your own food, but I can't say we've totally dialed it in, but we love gardening. We love the idea, and we certainly definitely recognize and appreciate the health benefits and environmental benefits of growing your own food. So we're going to talk about some of those benefits today and hopefully provide some direction, some resources, and maybe a little inspiration to get you into the realm of thinking about growing more of your own food if you're open and ready to take on that task in your house or your apartment or wherever you are.
Yeah, this was a topic that one of the members in our plant-based and stress-free community brought up, and there was an overwhelmingly majority vote for this topic. So I'm so excited to see that so many people are interested in growing their own food.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in it. And honestly, it made me think like I need to tune into some podcasts where experts are actually sharing, supportive information on how to successfully get the most yield inside on your patio or in your backyard garden or even in your house. I do have some experience, and we can share and talk about that a little bit. But mainly, like we said, we want to talk about the benefits of growing your own food, which are immense and really important to consider, especially, and I think more people are thinking about growing your own food in the current climate of the situation today with the pandemic kind of leading people to freak out a little bit. Is the food supply always going to be there? Should I stock up and hoard on canned foods and foods that store well? Are the farmers going to continue growing food for me? That's something that I've thought. I'm so grateful that when we walk into the grocery market, there is generally fresh produce. It might be a little bit more picked over. But the farmers are hard at work. But it has a lot of us thinking, what can we do? What part can we play in nourishing ourselves in terms of bringing the food from our garden into our mouths and be more connected with the source of our food?
Yes. So out of the major benefits of growing your own food, I see three major benefits. The first being that we have control over the nutrient density. The second being that we have control over what herbicides, pesticides aren't used on the food. And then a third major benefit is the connection that one fosters with the natural world and the mindful state that one can fall into in the process of gardening.
Yeah, 100%. And to that, I might also add, medical medium Anthony William, for those of you who are listening who kind of follow him, he's talked about the presence of what he says are elevated biotics on fresh leafy vegetables, fresh produce that is, picked from nature before it gets irradiated and washed and sprayed and rinsed and waxed and whatever it is. And I have definitely experienced the kind of energetic benefit of eating fresh, farm fresh, garden picked apple off the tree, berry off the wild bush, whatever it might be. I've felt the energy and the kind of the aliveness of that food as compared to food that I get at the grocery store that has been kind of irradiated and maybe it was picked last week or last month and stored in some cold storage system. So having a more direct connection certainly is really important when we're talking about nutrient density and when we're talking about fostering that relationship with nature, but also on kind of an energetic, potentially even a microbiotic relationship with the microbes in the environment that we know how important it is to develop healthy harmonious relationships between our individual beings and our individual microbes that we harbor in and on our individual bodies and the microbes that are prolific in the environment. So having a direct relationship with food where microbes are on all living things, having a direct relationship with living things regularly is really important, whether it's just a house plant or more ideally a plant in the house or outside of the house that we can actually touch and pick and put in our bodies.
Yes.
So let's talk about nutrient density. Maybe start there.
Yeah, let's start
Cool.
there. Because just some facts about the food that we do find at the grocery store. One big issue is that over the span of the last couple of decades, farming practices have been in such a way that the soils that a lot of our food is being grown in from is now becoming more deplete in the minerals and other nutrients that end up ultimately getting into the food themselves. So if our foods are being grown in nutrient deplete soils, that means that our fruits and vegetables, greens, legumes, grains, they're all also going to have a lower level of nutrient density.
Yeah. And also, I've heard some people talk about organic farming, organic gardening, and this would certainly play into, backyard farming and gardening and indoor gardening. The plants are generally under a little bit more stress than they are in a conventional growing environment where everything is just kind of clean and sterilized and weeded and perfect rows and under very controlled conditions, which you would think controlled conditions would offer kind of a better yield. And I think they certainly, I'm not an expert in this realm, but I think it certainly does. But it doesn't offer more yield, more quantity, for instance, is not better when we're talking about quality and when we're talking about health and when we're talking about nutrient density. So the benefit, on that level of when we're growing our own food, we might not have the yield and the quantity that a conventional farming system would offer us, but we would absolutely have more of a quality because our plants might not be under the ideal proper growing environment and they might have weeds in there that are kind of stressing the system a little bit. But that stress, I've learned, is actually very healthy for plants, which is, interesting when you think about stress and how we relate to stress. And, it can be healthy for us as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then of course you have more control over your own soil in your own backyard garden. You can bring in certain compost or other sort of plant foods to
Yeah.
really boost the nutrition of your overall soil.
Yeah.
So that nutrition is going to be going right into the foods as well.
Yeah, so once again, we're not, experts in, offering you any direct advice or recommendations on what nutrients to put in your soil, how to make your plants grow healthy and strong. But the fact is,
we didn't learn that in medical school.
We didn't, unfortunately, learn that in medical school. Susanna knows this. I've always been kind of if I did have a second parallel life, I would be a farmer. And I think that I'm not alone in that. I've heard a lot of people say that they've got this kind of real calling to connect with the land and the food in that sort of way. So I do, connect with food in that sort of way, but not to the extent that I would really like.
Mhm.
So, anyways, kind of moving on from the mineral nutrient density aspect of food. When you look at kale, for instance, all kale is not the same. Um, you know, all food, the quality of the food that we get in any grocery market, any farmer's market, or from your backyard depends on the quality of the nutrient density in the soil. So it might look the same, it might taste the same, and it might taste different, and it might look different, but it certainly is different. So yeah, what was the next thing that you said?
The next thing was the benefit of when you grow your own food, you have control over what
Oh
pesticides and
yeah,
herbicides aren't used in the
yeah.
growing
So this
process.
is, of course, a really huge topic as well. We know that organic food, it doesn't mean that it's not sprayed with pesticides and herbicides. It's just sprayed with the ones that are most least destructive, potentially. Hopefully, it's not a perfect system. But yeah, what do you want to talk about as far as the herbicide pesticide conversation goes?
Yeah, well, really, the best way to minimize ingestion of these herbicides and pesticides really is to grow your own food. And, just to point out that even if you're growing your own food in your backyard, it's getting rained on, there's actually still going to be trace amounts of
Yeah.
herbicides and pesticides just because now at this point it's in our water system, it's in the rain. But to significantly reduce that amount, grow your own food. And if that's really a concern, you can grow. People grow in greenhouses and things like that, and use their own filtered water if they're really wanting to minimize
Yeah.
exposure. But yeah, we know that these herbicides and pesticides, especially glyphosate, which is also known as Roundup, has numerous detrimental effects on our bodies. And we have a separate podcast episode just on glyphosate if you're interested in that.
Yeah, totally. So that one is definitely the most used in conventional growing practices. It's not used in organic growing practices. However, I think that I did read something recently that glyphosate was
Approved for some
approved
weird
for be
niche.
approved for growing inside greenhouses, actually, because inside greenhouses they want to keep the weeds down. So they're spot treating the weeds inside of greenhouses. They're not spraying the plants directly. Um, that worries me.
Yeah.
That worries me because once it's in that environment, then it's obviously going to get evaporated up, and kind of the greenhouse effect. It's going to kind of stay in that greenhouse growing environment. So it seems as though, unfortunately, the use of glyphosate is actually not shrinking. Certainly not shrinking as quickly as we'd all like for it to. And we know very definitively the exact health impacts that glyphosate has on our body, has on the environment, has when it comes to nutrient mineral depletion and toxicity in the body and in the earth. So yeah, like you said, Susanna, we have recorded a pretty in-depth podcast episode. Yeah, I mean, it's a big topic, and I'm not gonna dig into it here, but we will provide a link to that podcast episode on this podcast episode, which is www.alter.health/episode 183. But yeah, I mean, the whole herbicide pesticide thing is really important. And yeah, when you're growing your own food, then you can kind of determine and figure out how you can. And there, once again, I'm sure there's lots of tips and tricks, and I don't know them. But if you have pests, I know that there are natural things that you can do to mitigate that exposure. And the way that I've always personally related to it, it's like, all right, I'm growing kale. I'm going to share some of the kale with the caterpillars, with the moths. I'm just going to let them enjoy the kale as well. That being said, I also have learned that if your crops are subject to being eaten by pests and stuff like that, then that means that they're really not that resilient and they're really not that healthy. So I know that's kind of the biodynamic approach and thoughts behind gardening and farming, which once again, not an expert in. Um, so yeah, herbicides, pesticides, we want to stay away from them, and growing your own is a great way of doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, so then this last benefit that we mentioned of how gardening, your own food garden, really fosters connection with the natural world. This is a big one. This might sound like nothing. It's actually a really big one because if you look around, so many people are disconnected from the natural world. And what we always say here at Alter Health on our podcast is that health really comes from living in line with the laws of nature. So when we're immersing ourselves in, spending more time in nature, I feel like there's some subtle kind of unconscious connection and wisdom that we gain from just being surrounded by nature itself. And
Yeah.
same thing happens when we're digging in the dirt and planting seeds and
Yeah. Both on kind of a practical physiologic level in terms of getting in the dirt and exposing your body to healthy microbes and that level of health. But absolutely, I mean, I know that whenever I'm in nature, quote unquote, and we're always in nature, right? But whenever I am reminded of my presence in nature, which often comes through getting my hands dirty in a garden or walking, forest bathing or taking a hike or whatever that is, I am reminded of my inherent potential and innate health. And so the more time that we can be reminded of that, I feel like the better. So yeah, when it comes to, in my experience of growing your own food, it's definitely like it's in my it's definitely frustrating for me, when things go wrong and when, a crop dies or something like that or gets eaten or doesn't really proliferate as I would like. It's frustrating, but it's also an endless opportunity to learn and to study and to be patient and to be mindful and understanding compassionately of myself and how I relate with the process and the process itself. And it's like, all right, it just is humbling, I guess, is the word that comes to me. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. Well, so we don't have many personal tips to give you on how to start your own garden, but we have some resources that we'd like to share with you.
And, maybe I'll take just a couple moments while you're grabbing those resources. One thing that I am into is growing microgreens. And I've posted and shared a bunch on Instagram and stuff, my love of microgreens. And that is definitely a pretty easy way to get into this. And I literally have them growing in the closet right there. And actually, I don't have them right now. I'm a bad gardener, bad urban farmer, and I am not good at kind of keeping them going. So I kind of go through phases. And I literally, after this podcast, I'm going to start some seeds.
Sounds good.
But it's pretty easy. And so a lot of people have asked me to like do a video or share my tips on growing hydroponic microgreens. And it's really like incredibly easy. And I'm not going to share like how to do it here, but if you literally Google hydroponic microgreens, you can get a Tupperware and put a paper towel in them in the Tupperware and put some seeds on the paper towel and then sprinkle some water and keep it moist and then put it in the closet or some dark place, because remember, seeds germinate during under darkness. That's why you have to plant a seed under the earth in order to get it to germinate. But when you're doing hydroponics, there's no soil, there's no earth. You just have to keep it dark. So anyways, yeah, it's really, I think the barrier to entry into growing your own food is really low. And, so a good way to start is with kind of hydroponic microgreens. Obviously an herb garden or something on your windowsill, just like, doesn't have to be a big, plot. It can just be a little pot. You can put some seeds in there, get a start at the garden store and just watch it grow and connect with it every day and take a little leaf and sprinkle it on your salad and taste it and feel it and smell it and connect with it in that sort of way.
Yeah, yeah, I think herb gardening is really a good entry point. Definitely. That was my entry point into growing my own food.
Yeah.
And then you're reminded every day to put herbs on your food, and remember, herbs are some of the most medicinal foods we could be eating every day.
Yeah.
So yes.
Herbs.
So if you're interested in learning more about the microgreens, there is a website called bootstrapfarmer.com, and he's got a good How to Grow Microgreens 101 article where he talks about all the different medias that you can grow microgreens in. So you could do soil, you could do hydroponic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bootstrap Farmer, I have, thank you, Bootstrap Farmer. I know you're not listening to this, but I have watched some of his videos on YouTube when I was getting into microgreens. So yeah, that's a great microgreen information place. And then gardening, which we do have a small garden box on our patio. We don't have earth that we dig into, but we've got a box above ground filled with dirt. Is that what you call it? Like a garden bed?
We brought the earth up to us on the second floor here.
We brought the earth up to us, and you can do that too. If we can do it, like literally, if we can do it, you can do it. Absolutely. But the method that we use to garden in a small space is square foot gardening. And there's this website, Square Foot Foundation.
Square Foot Gardening Foundation.
Squarefootgardening.org. That kind of lays out.
Or actually, it's squarefootgardening.org.
Squarefootgardening.org. That kind of lays out the how-to in terms of laying out your square foot garden. And once again, it's just an easy way to take advantage of the limited space. If you've got a huge piece of land that you can work with, then lucky you. And obviously you might choose a different approach, but yeah.
And that reminds me also of these cool kind of towers that you can buy for, is it considered aeroponic or hydroponic?
I don't know.
Okay.
I know there's some aeroponic systems out there, but yeah.
Well, if space is a concern to you, then you can buy these very cool tower systems where you can grow like a vertical garden, basically.
The coolest one that I've come across recently is called Lettuce Grow, Lettuce, Lettuce Grow, and it looks really cool. It's definitely on my wish list. Those kind of things, they give you, I believe it's hydroponic system. They give you all the minerals, all the nutrients and directions, and it's a great way to connect with your food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's, of course, just traditional gardening. And for that, honestly, if you Google how to start your own vegetable garden, you will find so many resources. As I was looking through, I couldn't pick one over the other because they were all very informative.
Yeah, and I really wish I was more of an expert when it comes to just general gardening knowledge and information, and I'm not there yet. I'm not.
One day.
Just honestly not there yet.
We'll check back in with you in 30 years.
Yeah, give me a few decades and I will be your gardening expert. I'm going to learn it. I promise. I vow to be an expert gardener in my lifetime, but not yet. So, on that note, you guys, that's kind of all the information we have having to do with the benefits of growing your own food. Not a whole lot of tactical, strategic information other than just do it, just try it. And the benefits are vast and immense and span in all directions. But what other news announcements, anything before we sign off?
Well, yeah, I think at this point now we can announce for the very first time that our next Whole Food Plant Based Challenge is kicking off on April 6th. This is a free Whole Food Plant Based Challenge that we like to do every 2 months or so through our plant-based and stress-free community on Facebook. So if you're not already in that group, make sure you head over to Facebook and ask to join. And pretty soon we will be posting the registration for this next Whole Food Plant-Based Challenge.
If you're listening to this, the registration is posted at alter.health/WFPB-challenge. And this challenge is, by the way, focused on immunity and immune boosting. And we're going to provide all of our top tips when it comes to keeping your immune system strong during pandemics, during regular day-to-day life, really focusing on the terrain of your health rather than kind of sterilizing and worrying about pathogens or disease, having that innate resilience to combat anything and everything that comes into your path. So that's the focus of the next Whole Food Plant-Based Challenge, and we hope that you join us. Once again, alter.health/WFPB-challenge. And that's all for today. Once again, if you are tuning in, we would so appreciate if you would subscribe and leave a comment or a rating wherever you're tuning in from. Obviously, thank you for those of you who are and have joined us live on Facebook. And peace and love. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye for now.